This thing in the lower left corner, I noticed that last one with the website. It says it's a typical Westpac LNG facility. And it's a very accurate title because they've never built an LNG facility. This is a computer rendering of a drawing of an LNG facility. So their typical facility is on paper only. And I don't actually know how many projects Westpac has on the go right now, but when you look at this impressive project map they have on the website, this is what a lot of those little buttons show. So I think a lot of their work is fairly aspirational. And in fact, they do list 3 specific projects on their website, on one of the top tabs. This is one of the 3, and they just withdrawn this plan. It's a controversial plan for an oil by rail facility in Pittsburgh, California, in the Bay Area. It faced fierce opposition, it's very controversial, and they've now backed away from it. So that's a bit about Westpac in a bigger world, and the specifics of the Tilbury project. So Westpac has an NEB license, like Owen said, 3.5 million tons a year of LNG, which translates into them running 90 LNG tankers and 34 large LNG barges a year down the Fraser River. Westpac would be where the red dot is. The black dot up in the top is Fraser Surrey Docks. The green dot is the jet fuel terminal. And the blue dot is the nearest big residential development. That's Bridgeport Flats and Waterstone Piers. Anyone here who lives down there on the Fraser River by chance? Because you do.
Further up the mouth.
Okay.
I'll live there, maybe.
Hopefully. Okay, so Westpac has an NEB license. In the spring, they applied to the Federal Environmental Assessment Agency. You may have been involved in that process of sending in comments to say, this project needs an assessment and you should be in charge. In May, SIA announced there will be an environmental assessment, and a week later said BC will be in charge. So BC and Ottawa, BC is the only province that has an agreement with SIA whereby they can say they can substitute. So one party can be in charge of the process for both parties, and the other party will use the results. That only happens in BC. So now BC is in charge of the environmental assessment, and to me that's the Fox is in charge of the handouts. No one know about the BC government's obsession with exporting LNG. Okay, so we're now in this. So we're now in the scoping phase of that assessment process. Westpac has submitted a document to the BC government saying, here's what we want to cover in the environmental assessment, and we're now in the comment phase on that. So until next Monday, you have a chance to comment. And really, this is why we're here right now. So if you do one thing coming out of this session tonight, please go home and visit our website, which I'll talk about a bit more, and send in a comment. You don't have to be an expert. Some people here are extremely well versed in some aspects of the issues, but it's important you comment in general, and we'll talk about what you can comment about. So these cards have gone around. This has the URL for the website. You can get a quick sense of what the project is about and send your comment through that site. And we'll CC it for you to all to the City Council, to your MPs, to your MLAs, because the proponent right now in the government as well wants to engage us in a very, very narrow little bureaucratic process. You know, tell us what should be done about protecting the plants in the Fraser River's banks or the fishing river. What we're trying to engage in is a much broader political process to say, wait a minute, this has huge implications and you need to assess them all. So you've got to be involved in that. Okay, so this is a close to the site. You can see the existing forest facility, that underway phase 1 expansion. Burns Bog back here in the background, Alex Fraser Bridge. These pilings here right now are where the Westpac dock will go. And this is an old forestry company, that was their dock. It ties into the forest expansion. Now you can see, I think it's clear to everybody that Fortis and Westpac are joined at the hip. And it's not a coincidence that these projects are side by side, although Westpac sort of describes this as a brownfield site in the Fraser, it's a convenient place to build this thing, and so on and so forth. Let's talk a bit more about that Fortis expansion, because it's important that we draw that connection in this process, because they don't want us to. They want us to do this in a very piecemeal fashion. So Owen talked about the expansion that's underway right now, this sort of phase 1A expansion. It's small, and Fortis has already said that it's committed for use for ferries and for sending more gas up north and so on and so forth. And right now, as Owen said, the facility now is just used to sort of balance out demand. So this is a new project, but a small project. Those investor reports that Owen mentioned, This is an example of one from the spring. It talks about the phase 1B project, which is the next one, the one they want to build, but isn't under construction, and how big that'll be. It's involved with this export contract with Hawaii that they're trying to negotiate, so it is tied to the exports that Westpac wants to do, but it's still fairly small. Fortis also talks about how much they can build on the facility overall, which is quite a bit bigger. So let's just compare all those things again. And this, it doesn't really matter what the units are. LNG proponents talk about things in all different ways. Cubic meters of LNG, or tons of LNG, or billions of cubic feet of natural gas that can be compressed into LNG. What's important is the comparison. So this is Fortis right now. They can compress 5 million cubic feet of natural gas a day. What they're building right now will take them to 33 million cubic feet a day. And what they are considering building, that next phase, is 133. So this is Westpac's NEB license. This is their proposal based on the number of ships they want to run. And this is Fortis's own estimated maximum size. You know, it's no coincidence that these are all the same size. So what's important here is the difference between this and this, because that is a lot of work, that's a lot of impact, and they aren't being discussed. So right now the problem is that Westpac says all we're doing is building a dock, and Fortis says we have nothing to do with Westpac's proposal. But if they build that dock, you know that if they get these contracts, they're going to build it at the full capacity. And this is our chance now to control or to engage in that process, because they're not going to come back to us later on once it's built and say, oh, we want to make it bigger now. So we know there are impacts locally. People are already concerned of power lines through Delta to get to that facility. You know, and as Owen's discussed, it takes a lot of energy to liquefy natural gas. If it's electrically powered, it's just going to be the facility that makes Site C Dam inevitable. You know, at some point, that dam, which is still in the works, will become inevitable because things like this project are going to make it so. So that's the Fortis expansion. So what about those upstream impacts? This is a photo from the Horn River Basin. It's the furthest north basin that Owen talked about. And all those lines are, they're seismic lines, they're exploration roads. That's a well site in the middle. This is what LNG looks like in northeastern BC. The LNG, the gas isn't just sitting there, it's got to be drawn out of the ground. So building these facilities increases the demand.
Whereabouts is it?
This is in the far north of BC in the Horn River Basin. So the Pembina Institute in BC has produced this model where you can put in any one of the projects in BC, you can estimate these upstream impacts. So I did that for the Westpac project. Now, over a 30-year period, I think it went for long enough, but over a 30-year period, if the Westpac proposal goes ahead at capacity, it will mean at least, could mean 1,400 new wells or more. almost 24 billion liters of fresh water used in the fracking process. And just as a comparison, that's 9,500 really-sized swimming pools of water. Of that, in turns, it creates 8.5 billion liters of waste. Another 3,000 swimming pools of volume size of waste. All those upstream emissions, 33 million tons of CO2 emissions added to the atmosphere. At the time we know we absolutely need to reduce emissions. And this is if the facility is powered by electricity, by clean electricity coming down. If it's powered by natural gas itself, more emissions obviously, but also more wells because they have to draw in natural gas to power the plant. So it just gets worse. None of this stuff is in the environmental assessment. The Westpac says we're building a dock. It's on the Fraser River. We'll talk about the plants and the fish, and that's it. This is the kind of stuff that we need to say has to be in the assessment. If we don't, no one will. And if we don't, these things we built, and the myth that LNG is this clean, discrete product that has no impact, it's clean burning, is going to be continued. I did the same thing for the Sawasan project because it's current right now. It's somewhat larger than the Westpac project, so the impacts are larger again. We talked about if this facility or if these facilities are powered by electricity, where is that going to come from? This is a photo of the Site C Dam, of the Peace River, an area that would be covered by the Site C Dam. And even though that dam is still contested, there are First Nations in court right now challenging it. There are other processes it has to go to. BC Hydro is currently clear-cutting the whole area to prepare for a reservoir. So this is the exact same location, slightly different angles. You can can see that those changes are already happening. Now, the dam is not yet inevitable, but the pressure to build this thing is immense. And it's being done to serve the LNG industry. It's obvious to everyone. So what about those local impacts? And they start with the issue of site selection. Owen talked about this, the Society of International Gas, Tanker, and Terminal Operators. And they have a set of guidelines for where you should build these facilities. And the Westpac proposal fails to meet most of them. It's on a narrow, winding river channel that features a lot of marine traffic, and it's close to population centers. The facility, this process of site selection should be happening first, but they're building this here because of the forest facility, and they're justifying it afterwards. So one of the things we need to say is that in the assessment is that this project needs to have a proper site assessment. Is this actually a good place to build an LNG terminal? That question hasn't been asked or answered yet. You can recall the photos that Owen showed you of LNG terminals in Darwin, Alaska, or Darwin, Australia, and other places. Those are all on the open ocean, basically. And when the industry says that there have been no accidents to date, it's probably because they've been following those guidelines and haven't been building facilities in places like this. A bit more about this location on the Fraser River. So this is the actual shipping channel in the Fraser. It's a two-way channel right now. LNG tankers, I suppose you would say, they would want to shut that alternative traffic down, so it's going to be another impact on the local economy. But most importantly, right now, if Westpac builds this facility, they want to dredge an 18-hectare turning basin in the river. 18 hectares is the size of 30 soccer fields. It's a huge area in the Fraser River. And this is in an inside curve of the river. This is blown up a bit more, so this is the Fortis site. This is where the terminal will be. It's on an inside curve of the river. There's people here who know more about this than I do, and I hope they'll speak on it later. But this is where the river wants to dump sediment as it comes around the corner and slows down.
Can you identify where the jet fuel terminal will be?
That would be, where are we at? The jet fuel terminal is right there. Right there.
And the Alex Fraser?
Alex Fraser is out of the picture. This is Riverport Flats here in Richmond. This is Fraser Wharfs. So that's the massive tunnel. These island right here. And so, as Otto can explain better than I can, this proponent wants to basically dig a hole in the Fraser River that every year is going to fill up the sediment as it comes downstream. Every year or every couple of years it's going to be dug out again. So in some senses it becomes a trap. Instead of that sediment going further down the river and building out the Fraser Delta and the estuary, it falls into a hole that's been dug in the river, and every year it's taken out. The Fraser River is pretty much a living organism. It's active, it's dynamic. We barely know what's going on with river hydrology. To be digging these massive holes here into the jet fuel terminal and upstream to the Fraser Docks proposal, those have big impacts. This stuff needs to be studied and taken care of. This map is actually from the Fraser River Estuary Management Program, which is now shut down. It shows habitat quality on the Fraser River. Red being the best quality, where basically you should stop and you shouldn't build anything. This is the site of the proposed Westpac terminal right here. Some red-coded U.S. waterway suitability assessment. There is no hazard zone assessment on the Fraser River in this proposal, and there should be. In the U.S., it would be required. So we need to have the same level of assessment here. So the popsicle zone, the sunburn zone. So this is getting into, you can see where we are in Richmond, and I should have actually for tonight's purposes marked that out, but some of you may recognize some of the features in relation to Richmond and where they fall. The point is that these facilities shouldn't be built where there are a lot of people living, and they should be properly assessed before they're chosen. But this has been chosen in advance, and we're fighting a rearguard action right now.
There's another key figure about quicksand.
Liquefaction.
It says there's where earthquake is gone.
Right. It's true, and we should show it another.
And the other point is, when they dredge the river, who's going to pay for the new bridge? when Translink Fort built a bridge bigger than Ellis Fraser.
Yeah, and that's being discussed right now.
Well, the problem is, we sit here and discuss, and they start building it, but it's useless of having these meetings. It's like the South Perimeter Road. They were having open houses after the road was a third built. Well, why are we bothering having open houses if the highway's already been built? And this is what's gonna go
Maybe
on.
we can have that discussion after, once we finish up, and then you can share your concerns at the end, all right?
Well, it should be right now.
Okay, we'll just, let me finish.
Question up there should be, why do we vote for people like John Yap and Teresa Watt? That's the question.
They're all important questions. So anyways, moving on, in terms of that assessment process, Westpac explicitly says that they take no responsibility for the product, for safety or control or care once it's been loaded on the vessel. They're basically saying that all we are as a middleman, we put this up on the ship and it's someone else's responsibility. The problem is that in Canada right now, there's a regulatory gap here. There is no agency in charge of making sure that LNG facilities are in safe locations or ensuring that the movement of LNG carriers is done safely. Part of those responsibilities is being given over to the BC Oil and Gas Commission. They feel like most of them have experience in managing these facilities either. So we need to demand that those regulatory gaps are filled before these projects go ahead. Because we know that accidents are going to happen. This is West Shore Terminal's full facility. This is in January 2013 when the Cape Apricot, which is approaching the loading area, went right through the causeway at West Shore Terminals. And I'm sure there was a pilot on board at the time. And accidents happen, whether it's a coal freighter or an LNG tanker.
Where's that?
This is at West Shore Terminals in Delta, the coal port that sticks out next to Slauson Ferry Terminal. And you can see actually the track of the route of this vessel before it went straight through the causeway. It is a very strange set of loops. Like they missed, they turned around, they came back, and they didn't make it. And this is just an aside, but at the time, West Shore Terminals, you can clearly see when the conveyor broke, the coal dust was dispersing in the water column. West Shore Terminals had the, I would say, audacity to say that some people think that they saw coal dust in the water. What they actually saw was an artificial reef that was constructed to improve the habitat for marine life. So don't expect a straight answer if there is none. Other local impacts, and this is getting more focused here on Richmond. I find it quite disturbing that, still at this stage, months into their proposal, the proponent is misdescribing this whole Watermania, Riverport Cinema Complex, and condominium complex as Fraser Wharves, basically a large parking lot, which is further downstream. So they clearly haven't done their research in terms of understanding who lives here and what's going on. They're saying these are the nearest residential locations, but actually when the ship leaves the jetty, it's going to be going within 200 meters of condominiums in the Richmond waterfront.
Whereabouts is new jet fuel going in?
Just upstream, just next door there. So this is the last local impact that I want to flag. Westpac has said that it's just too complicated to assess the effect of this project on property values. There's lots of factors to consider. How can we possibly weigh them all and come up with an answer? And I brought this in. I want to show you this in detail because when you read this document, this is what they're actually doing here. They're saying, well, there may be. Well, in this case, they're saying we would only consider in terms of environmental conditions that impact property values, not accidents or deliberate acts of destruction. Maybe difficult to estimate, but we think that if we did estimate them, they'd be small, so we're not going to estimate them. That's basically how these kinds of concerns are bracketed away and discarded. And these are the kinds of things that we need to say, well, hold on a minute, how do you get to make that decision? And to tell the BC Environmental Assessment Office, I think we need a better review of this project. So those are some of the key missing local impacts, but what about downstream impacts? When the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency put BC in charge of this review process, they said, you have to study the impacts for the project, for the site, and the impacts out to the mouth of the Fraser River, only to Sandheads. Everything else downstream from Sandheads is going to be considered in the environmental impact assessment for the Roberts Bank Terminal 2, or the Roberts Bank Terminal 2 project, which is underway right here. Now, they're doing a marine shipping addendum for that assessment right now for Roberts Bank. When you look at it, there's no mention at all of Westpac Tilbury project. So the federal government has said, we're not going to assess those impacts. We're going to give them to someone else to assess. They're not assessing them. And in any case, Ottawa has said that would be for information purposes only. It won't affect the decision of the outcome. So there's a whole area of federal responsibility from north of the Fraser River to international waters where no one is doing any assessment on this project at all. And that's absurd. What are the impacts on increased vessel traffic, layered on top of all the other projects, on killer whales, on juvenile salmon habitat, and all the other things that we're concerned about in the Strait of Guadalupe and the Salish Sea. Now, all of that stuff happened under the previous Conservative government. And I'm hopeful with our new government, we have an MP here tonight with us in the room, that there is going to be change. I know that Carla Colto in Delta has also expressed concern about how the Port Authority is making decisions and engaging the public, and I'm hopeful. So that's part of why when we do this commenting process, we need to make sure the federal government knows what the level of concern, because we can change this if we all work together. So back to this commenting period right now. This is the website I'm hoping you'll visit. You can learn more about the project, the things we discussed tonight. You can send your comments right to the site, and if you do that, we'll make sure that they're copied to all your other political representatives. We'll also add them to the existing public comments here on the website, and so we build our own public record. If you send your comments straight to the BC Environmental Assessment Agency, they say, and it says write the order authorizing this environmental assessment, we'll only consider the comments that we deem are within the scope. So if 1,000 people say, you need to look at, the risk of a terrorist attack, for instance, and they say, no, that's not important, that's not important, that's important, we would never know. Okay, so if you comment through this site, we can keep things transparent and open and keep track of what the concerns are. And again, this isn't just about this narrow bureaucratic process. This is how we can engage governments on this issue right now. This is our chance to blow this up and make it into a bigger deal than they want it to be. The wheels turn really slowly on this stuff, but there's much more to do. I fully understand that, but it's important that we engage in these processes, because if we don't, if we just say, what's the point, then they're going to say down the road, nobody expressed any concern. So we've got to do it. We'll send them to all these people. I just want to say that already 1,000 comments went in the spring to SIA, and that was great. That made this into a media issue, made it a federal election issue. And in past projects, using this kind of process, we've had well over 10,000, 15,000 comments gone into government over the Fraser Street Golf Course. So it's worth doing. Quick sum up. One of the biggest things, and these are only the most egregious issues that are missing. You may be experts in other finer detailed areas, and I encourage you to comment. But again, you don't need to be an expert, but it's really useful to touch on some of the big concerns. So those upstream impacts that are missing from the assessment, and all this stuff is on the website. The local impacts, like the proper site assessment, like the assessment of accidents and deliberate attacks in the hazard zone mapping. What about the forest expansion, what that means for Delta? What about property values? And then those downstream impacts as well, including the climate impacts when LNG is burned. Our government has signaled that it's taking climate change seriously, and things are really going to change when we start saying, okay, this project is going to have implications for the climate. When the stuff is burned, what are those impacts and how do we assess them? Right now that's not happening, it has to. And the other cumulative impacts like dredging and vessel traffic. So just to back up and say, what does this mean for the Fraser River? These fossil fuel projects are coming at us really thick and fast right now. It's a game of whack-a-mole. You take on one and another one pops up right behind it. And I know I've spent probably 100 hours reading the documents for this and going to the open houses and doing workshops like this, and working with Owen to build a website. And not many people have that time, right? And not even many local governments have that time to devote staff to work on these things. The government wants us to engage in very small, narrow ways and call that a process done, and it's not good enough. So we need to engage, but we need to do it on our terms and not government's terms. So, this is no disrespect to the hardworking staff at the BC Environmental Office, but government, our government wants to see these projects go through. The process isn't designed for it's designed for approval. So we need to keep them under scrutiny ourselves and make sure that they get the comprehensive assessments they deserve. The Fraser River is one of the richest salmon-bearing rivers in the world, if it isn't the richest. And government and proponents like to talk about it as an industrial river or a working river, but it's really much more than that. You know, from the mouth here to the headwaters, it provides many things for many people. And it's fragile, and we've been abusing it for 150 years. And, you know, it's a percentage, it's a fraction of what it was before, and still we're being asked to find balance and to share that fraction that's left. And it's time to push back and say, no, we're done. We're time to take care of this river. So, thank you. This is a great time to talk, but I also hope, there's a lot of your expertise. If you have ideas about what should be in this assessment that's not there, please toss them out so we can share this. Tell them that.
Yes, listening here is what I find excellent details in minutia, but that's not the real problem. The real problem, in 1951, the Canadian population was 14 million, about 2.6 billion in the world. Today, there's about 36 million in Canada, 7.3 billion in the world. In 50 years, there's going to be 15 billion on Earth, and Calgary is the cleanest city on Earth with a population of over 1 million. So the population in the third world, where 90% of the people are born outside the first world, 90% of all live births are being born there. So the energy demand is being created by live births outside the first world. And even most of our population is immigration driven, and our immigration driven costs are roughly $30 to $50 billion a year. So when we start looking at things, we have to look at a more encompassed way. Because essentially, what we're dealing is with minutia and not the real problem.
Can I interrupt you for a second? You're making some points that are important, but people are here to talk about this project and the process, so can we just keep the comments focused?
No, but see, you're dealing with minutia rather than what's the real issue, which is population
Let's deal
growth.
with what we can
That's a
change.
different meeting and a different discussion.
The big issue is placement. Like, you may recall the propane explosion they had in Toronto. After that, the province did a whole-scale study on where the plant should be and I think they closed 6 plants. To me, the big thing is placement. If you can get that into the assessment, that will slow things down. And you won't have this random placements of these things.
I agree.
Well, the environmental assessment process is, to me, broken. Yes, I think we definitely have to participate in it, because otherwise if they make a commitment, you haven't participated and this is how you're allowed. But we also need to approach all of our governing bodies and advocate to them, and then I think people need to be willing to put their bodies on the line at some point, because we're not stopping things. We haven't stopped the jet fuel. At some point, and we're all old in this room. Most of us are, pardon. and that's very distressing. In fact, there's probably younger people out there that I see.
All of us should run over us, we would know the difference.
It's just that I think we have to look at different strategies than just the environmental assessment, because we're not going to change that. We can have our input, and because you have to. But at the same time, other strategies we've got to start thinking about.
I just want to respond to that briefly. You're making a really good point, and there's also folks in this room I recognize who've been involved in those other strategies already, and probably will be again. But the one important thing to keep in mind here is that it's not just BC, it's the federal government. So if the federal government decides they're not satisfied with BC's review, then this project isn't done. This review isn't done. So I think there's pressure that needs to be put on sorry, I'm pointing at you, but on our federal representatives.
I agree. I'm Joe Pescasler. I'm the federal representative in East Richmond.
When since the federal government listens to BC anyway, we don't exist. We don't.
Thanks, yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having these meetings. I think this is what we have to do way more of, and each of us has to tell all our friends to come, and there's so much propaganda in the media that it's really hard to separate out, even to understand how it's gotten to this point, and even, I feel even confused about what's been built already and what's not built, and there's so much obfuscation coming from the government, it's just incredible. I am wondering whether there is any regulatory process whereby the human impact is evaluated. I always think about it about environmental protection, but a lot of people tune out. It sort of seems like a catchphrase that you can kind of just goes in one ear, not the other, perhaps. And I'm wondering if the government is supposed to just, in its own decision-making process, take into account the human impact, or whether there is some specific process whereby those impacts on livability and all these other criteria. Is there a political process for that?
There's some of those concerns are included in the scoping of this process, but I'll be honest, when I read those documents, it's almost like all the important values are somehow, bracketed out, and it becomes a very abstract discussion. So, I think you should send in comments of that nature to say that these are important. Have a look, because we didn't discuss any of that stuff tonight, but they talk about socioeconomic impacts and impacts on the workforce, things like that, noise and light and things. So they need to be raised.
Well, just the farming going on in that area, in Richmond and Delta, is substantial. I lease farmland, and it would be in the popsicle zone. So that's really scary.
Well, one of the things they don't talk about, they say there's 3 residences, but they don't mention that Tilbury industrial site is supposed to be one of the largest industrial sites on the Lower Mainland. And, if that thing goes off, it can not only finish off all those businesses, it'll turn all the people there into popsicles or French fries, not too sure which one. But, and also, if it gets Burns Bog on fire, then we're really in trouble. Because Allier back there did some calculations, because apparently an area the size of a soccer field in Burns Bog holds as much carbon as if you took your car and ran it around 3 times. So think about it. So she may find time to try and figure out how many soccer fields are left in the conservation area. And, they don't mention, they talk very nicely and say, well, it all vaporizes. It may vaporize, but it still contributes to greenhouse gases. We want to be the greenest province, and we want to be the greenest city in Vancouver, and we're forgetting what's happening on our doorstep. But young people can do something extremely well, which the rest of us just stand back and admire. You know how to do social media. You know how to do Facebook. You know how to Twitter. I started Twittering, and then I started changing it, and I quit Twittering.
Any other questions from the microphone?
Just sort of this start talking.
I wanted to know who is actually in charge of the port. Like Metro Vancouver Port doesn't answer to the province, it doesn't answer to the cities. Why is it that they can approve a project like this themselves without any of the people that live here having any say in it whatsoever? And I believe that it's the responsibility of the federal government. Why is the creation of the federal government not listening to anybody here at all, ever?
Because there was a change in the legislation
Yeah.
in 2013.
Yeah.
Changed the environmental assessment.
And we change it back so
Absolutely,
that they have to
yes.
listen to us, please?
Yes.
Okay, right?
I should just point out that I didn't mention at the start, and it's my mistake. This project is not under the port's review at all.
No.
For whatever reason, the Port Authority gave up its waterfront lease to this land in 2014.
Well, probably because they paid somebody off. Can we follow the money, right? Where's the money going here?
So it's a purely provincial and federal review through SIA, but not through the port, unlike most of the other projects.
Yeah, but Kevin, it's still their port, and they're still responsible for shipping, safety, and all these issues. The buggers are hiding in the bush right now and smiling.
Well, they're hiding in the bush because they're not responsible to us, right? Period.
So as a Richmond resident, I'm worried about two things from a safety perspective, and that's any exhaust, because we're downwind, I think, from this project. I think the prevailing winds blow from the east and the southeast. No?
Blows from different directions.
Well, I think prevailing generally.
You can smell the pulp mill from the Nino.
Yeah, I think though, if you look it up, it comes generally from the east. And what does that mean from exhaust, from just the general operation of the plant? And the second one, safety, if there's a leak and the gas wafts across Richmond.
There'll definitely be a flare associated with the plant of that size. Those flare gases will be nitrous oxides, sulfur oxides, and obviously carbon dioxide, of which the latter two are fairly hazardous to anybody with asthma, and will eventually acidify both the river with the carbon dioxide and the land around here. It will not be good for farmers to have that poured day after day after day onto their land, and not good for people with asthmatic conditions to be breathing nitrous oxide into the smog. And sulfur oxide, which is very acrid acid. So not good. The health effects of LNG plants are not well studied, much as the effects on populations of having an explosion are not well studied, but not good is the answer. Health Canada doesn't get involved in this, they should, but currently this is strictly within the purview of CIA, the Canadian Environmental Assessment, and the BC equivalent, BC Environmental Assessment. So we have a very broken process here for approval of these things. It doesn't take cumulative impacts into effect. It doesn't even consider the fact that if you put a jet fuel plant right opposite an LNG plant, you might as well add gelignite, dynamite, and the fuse. Well, take a chance. Much as putting it out, putting the Boston LNG plant right next to a coal port, where coal, LNG, they get to tangle weather. You'll be able to see that part of the movie. So this is planning gone haywire. And by cutting it off into little bits, going, we're only building a jetty, and then we're only building an expansion to an LNG plant, and then we're only adding to the coal port, is boiling the frog, which an analogy is if you want to boil the frog, put it in cold water, turn up the heat. By the time you realize it's too hot, you can't get out. So that's what we got going on here, and it's up to the federal government to fix it.
So there's a lot of people who hands up, so that, I would say fellow, and then you, and then you, and then you, okay?
Have you contacted any business associations in the retail, tourism, or fishing industry? I think as stakeholders with a potential loss, and as a collective group, they can be quite effective when sending a response to the provincial or federal government.
What I can tell you from Delta, because Kevin and I, all three of us were at the Delta Chamber when there was a presentation by Westpac, and our Mayor Lois Jackson was there and got up and praised it. I want to make a comment before I forget, and I want to thank Mr. Pescadello and mention that the representative from Carleton was at our very first meeting, and so was Vicki Hunting, the MLA from Delta South. Absent was any representation for Delta North, Scott Hamilton, and absent is any representation from the city of Delta or municipality of Delta. They have been supporting this. So I think it's the best thing that ever happened to get sliced bread. So we have to educate them, and sometimes you have to follow Margaret Mead's philosophy. It takes a small group of people to make changes, and I'm looking at here, we may be a small group, but we're a quality group, and thank you for coming.
Right there.
I had two kind of comments. One, just based on what we just heard, was one in terms of like pushing the federal government to make a shift. I mean, it seems like a lot of these activities and projects are kind of backing up right now. That why not restore fresh to what it was and return some of this oversight and this review and coordination to an actual responsive local body. That seems like we're going to have this conversation continuously unless like a change like that, which is very simple, which there is a strong 3-decade track record of being effective. There's people out here who used to work with it, people who are capable and competent. Is that not a manageable, easy kind of win for what we're all talking about here today? The second thing I wanted to talk about was Again, like I like to do my big picture research and feel like I'm on top of where things are and have a first grassroots understanding of like where to start from. And so a full cost accounting, all the cumulative effects we just heard about across the province, all the CO2 emissions, greenhouse gases, climate change, all of these climate tests that don't seem to be part of these processes. We've just had in the last week, the entire world recognize that things need to change. And speaking maybe on behalf of people younger than myself, all these activities and industries we just heard about tonight, we're gonna have to be shut down in about 30 years. So why are we driving so hard? Why are we subsidizing kind of foreign companies to profit off of this? Why are we taking all this money that we could be spending on renewables and alternatives and like real jobs that are valuable and contribute? Like what's happened in the past week where we can say, hold on, if these things weren't even conceived a few years ago in a tangible way, clearly they do not pass the test. And like, can't you just say that, like, anyways, I'm rambling now, but
but it's all good. It's all good. You're totally right. We need to connect the dots. Ottawa has now said some amazing things about a 1.5 degree ceiling temperature. That getting there is going to be, or staying below that is going to be incredibly hard. And it's going to mean a lot of these things have to be reevaluated from the ground up. I don't want to keep talking too, so.
Yeah, so how does this affect the Northern Gateway pipeline and Keystone?
I don't think it has any connection. That's where we, LNG, completely separate.
The connection between the gas price and the oil price.
Yeah.
If you take the oil price that Peter Manbridge produces every evening on the end of the National, divide it by 7, you've got the gas price. And if that's less than 12 bucks, currently the gas price is around 35, 37 bucks. Divide by 7, you've got 5 bucks. That's less than 12 bucks. This thing is not economical, at least in the short term. They're hoping that it will be in the longer term, but they will probably delay building until it is, because no banker is going to give them the money to start an unprofitable business. But life goes up and down in the resource business, and I think that stopping them getting a license to do this is important, because if they do, they can sit on it for 25 years and hope that the market comes back and without as much as a 5-year leave to one of us can start building if they get that license. So it's important. And if we change the rules in the meantime, there's something called TPP, which allows them to sue us.
Right, and who are the corporate players?
I'm sorry?
Who are the corporate people?
Westpac is owned 80-some% by a company called High Star Capital. High Star Capital is an investment company. Its biggest single investment is a company called Kinder Morgan. They don't say that in the proposal, but if you go to High Star Capital's website, they proudly announce it. And you have to be careful in all these pipelines and things that what's coming down the pipe isn't gas. And it may be something entirely different with a port and a big pipeline. You can do things with oil as much as you can with gas.
Yeah, a couple of points. First, I'm involved with in the battle against the Site C dam. And you should add that into the equation, because the only LNG plants that need Site C dam power is wood fiber, and the plants in Richmond West can burn natural gas and create it themselves. But these plants require electricity, so the reason for flooding the Peace River is for these plants in particular. And they've been able to give us no other reason for building it. Metro Vancouver is on a program of reducing our power needs by 40%. Not increasing them, reducing them. Site C will increase the power by 40%, which gives us 80% power. What's it for? It's for LNG, and it's for these plants here. Second point I want to make is that Robin Sylvester told Metro Vancouver over coal, and this applies to LNG as well, that the federal government responsibility as an agency in the river is not what happens after it leaves the port. They have no responsibility of how it's burned, where it's burned, and what it does to the climate. That is not their forte. I think what changes everything, and to use a quote, is what happened when our Minister of Environment went to Paris and said, we are committing ourselves to 1.5. You cannot beat 1.5 if you're going to burn this stuff in Asia. unless you say it's not our responsibility. And I think that's the message we've got to get across. It is our responsibility. If we produce it and ship it, we're responsible for what they do in the end. And that's what Richmond Council wants to talk to you about when we ever get around to meet.
Library will close in 20 minutes at 9:30. Please check out your books and complete your photocopying as soon as possible.
There's a woman at the back that has been very patient. Go ahead.
Yes, so thank you for the very informative discussions. I have a few questions. One is, are any of the publications going to be more widely available, especially some of the data and figures? I mean, I understand the gentleman's point about immigration, but that is a source of great support. It's particularly given all the debate about land speculation. People are going to care that their property values are going to be affected, particularly if show a compelling map of areas that might be affected that could help reach a wider audience. I do also have a reminder, I guess. Throughout the debates, Justin Trudeau has talked a lot about having a robust environmental regulatory process. He hasn't said any specifics, but it would be great if concerns were brought to that to remind him that that was on the table and certainly very publicly broadcasted. But yeah, so I think it's my question is generally around, what is the strategy? How wide of a group of people are we aiming to reach, and how can we best help do that?
I think the first thing is to not only write something here, as Kevin has pointed out, and I like the idea of what Kevin is doing, because he's capturing it and spreading it out. And so messages are going to be, one message is going to go much farther than just straight one. Write your own message and encourage at least 2 other people to do it, and ask them to encourage. That shampoo thing, you ask 2 people and another 2 people, well, that's what we have to do. And one phrase that I'm starting to use is freeze-dried or French fry, which do you wish? And maybe what we need, we've got a blue dot campaign, maybe we need a connect the dots campaign. But think about those things. We've got your names and your emails, and you'll be getting stuff not only from Kevin and VTAC, but also from the Burnsbach Conservation Society, so you'll get to know more than you wish you did.
I'd like to talk to you more at the end too.
Yeah.
You've mentioned this website where you can comment.
Yeah.
What else can be done by anyone in their on this issue?
Talk to your friends, get them to write something, and even if it's just, I don't like it.
It's, it's the analogy for me is the work that we did around the coal port project, and it started in rooms like this, where we say, are you aware this thing is happening, and that you don't have to say, and we need to give you. And so the next step of that is, there needs to be a strong local residents' voice, whether it's in Richmond and in Delta, to say, wait a minute, we're not being properly consulted on this. We live here, we're worried about these impacts. That's when your city council will pay attention. I live in Vancouver, and I'm just a guy who cares about climate change. But you're a Richmond resident, I assume? Well, that's too bad. Because I got a whole spiel for you, but not you. But anyways, the next step is to start organizing, local on-the-ground community stuff. And we haven't yet with this project made any effort to talk to the media, and that's the next step, to bring it up a level where the media concerned. Once they know that people are doing these things, they start paying attention, people have to respond. It starts to build its own momentum at that point. So I agree with Eliza, talk to your friends, get organized, stay in touch with us, and the next time something happens, maybe it'll be a rally, maybe it'll be something more dramatic where people will want to come and see what's going on. So get informed, comments, stay in touch. Sorry, Patrick?
Yeah, I would say we're lucky this year. It's not an election year. I know all of you go and vote every year, right? You put all that energy into voting, but there's no election in 2016. So you can spend this year actually getting to know your elected officials. So I know you all voted for Joe. I know you all voted for Harold. So now you get to send them an email every once in a while and say, hey, remember this issue? What are you guys doing on this issue? Here's what I think about this issue. And it's not just the guys who are in this room, because they've already bought the you need to talk to your elected officials between elections, because there are some of them who actually care about this stuff and actually need to be given a reason to vote the right way on things like this. We elected officials have to be told that there's someone out there supporting them to vote against things like this, because trust me, the guys who are running these things, they're getting in touch with their elected officials and making sure that their message is getting through. So part of your job when you organize people is to actually it's easy to write an email to every elected official who's in your local, your provincial, and your federal ridings, and make sure they know what your opinion is. It makes a difference. And Kevin's really good at that.
Except for my voice like tonight, because the fellow who hasn't spoken here.
Yeah, just one question. I noticed that this is being recorded tonight. How can this get out to the public? You know, there's 60 of us here, and we may talk to 1 or 2 people. We can't get the emphasis over what we've heard tonight. I mean, it's overwhelming the information we've got here. How can this get out to the public and to the politicians?
No one has been through this whole cycle with LNG on Squamish.
If you see me afterwards, I can give you the contact information, websites. If you Google my name, there's a bunch of cards here. And LNG, you'll see about half a dozen different videos in different places that I've given on this presentation, variants of it. And you can go there and all the slides are there. The most recent one I gave was in Manahat, over on the island where they're planning to put one in the Saanich Inlet, right next to the greenest riding in the whole country. And the locals there don't care for it as much as you don't. So Google my name, there's some cards here, or ask me, and you can have the whole presentation I gave if you can use Dropbox to download it. I'm quite willing to give it to anybody here who asks me and who sends me an email going, hey, send me the link to the Dropbox and let me suck down that whole presentation. It's pretty massive, I can't email it. So Dropbox is the only way. By all means, and then send it, show it. Don't change the numbers because my name's on it. But send it to wherever you want, look at it, and use it to respond to this request for comment, public comment. And I'd last like to say that it was a Liberal leader who said, regulators give permits, but communities give permission. Remember that.
Tonight's presentation actually will be online. What we've done tonight is going to be online soon. And Owen, where?
So I'm going to put it on the Real LNG Hearings website. It's also going to go on the Burns Blog website. And basically, it'll be a YouTube clip, shareable anywhere. The entire thing will be anybody who wants to share their friends. You put it on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you want. It's instantly shared.
I want to go back to what Patrick said too, because the way that the coal issue broke through was when, first of all, we had the report arrogantly just saying this is how it's going to be. We don't really, he tells me it's April, we're not going to be in the situation. And then one city after another passed a resolution saying we're opposed to this project. First it was, I think it was New West, and then Surrey, and then White Rock. And suddenly the port has a problem on its hands. It's going to run around and do presentations and say, well, wait a minute, what do you mean? So, and then the media pay attention, and then, it's cynical, but it's true. They like the conflict. They like the fight. So start with your city council. Start by talking to Richmond and saying, what do you think about this, and why are you silent on it? Make it an embarrassment, so they have to say something. Hopefully they say we're opposed or we're concerned. We build them into that way too.
What's the next milestone in this process? So the feedback is taken until Monday?
Okay, so the comment period ends on Monday. One thing we're doing this week as well is the process of getting to hear the proponent says we've consulted with all sorts of different people. To be honest, they've consulted with industrial uses of the river and the board of trade and those sorts of people. So we're going to be putting pressure on them this week to say, you've got to start this over again because you haven't probably consulted a wider range of concerns. People who know the fisheries values, people who know about all sorts of issues. Hopefully we can delay it that way. They may just say, no, sorry, we're got enough information. In which case, they take the results of this process, they produce a final scoping document that says here's what we're going to do, and then they write the environmental assessment. And they hope to have that done, if I recall correctly, by the summertime, in which case we'll then ask to comment on the final product and say what we think about that. But between now and then, we've got a lot of time to make people aware, get the city councils involved. Vicki Huntington is very concerned. She's an independent in LA. The federal government's concerned. We can appeal to Ottawa that the federal process is being neglected and it's not being properly covered by the province. There's lots of avenues in all sorts of ways. But that's the broad story.
Why is the BC Environmental Agency allowing this? Why, is it rigged or something?
It's designed to greenwash everything.
How did they manage to do that?
Well, Harper did that for CO, so.
The fundamental raison d'etre of the BC Environmental Assessment Office is to find a way to mitigate any amount of damage. They start with that premise is that this is a goal. We really have to find a way to mitigate any possible damage. That's what it starts as. In other words, they start with yes, and then they figure out ways that if it really doesn't make sense or it damages this or hurts that, oh, well, it's only a small bit, and it can go ahead. That's the wrong point. Even when the Catholic Church goes through and appoints saints, they have a devil's advocate. But they don't have that here. We would expect the BC government to act on our behalf. But this BC government has hook, line, and sinker bought the whole LNG picture, as you saw in the earlier statements, and the BC Environmental Assessment Office reports to them, to Minister Coleman. And so that their answer is yes, but you have to mitigate these damages or find some other way to do the process without hurting it too much. So until that changes and goes, we have a blank slate and the answer can be yes or no, then we don't have a process that is fair, reasonable, science-based, and will result in an outcome that we can agree with. So that's the problem. We need to solve it. BC is the only province that's allowed to do this substitution. We need to stop that.
I want to thank everybody now, and if you've got other questions after we close off, you can come out and talk to these gentlemen. And if you're worrying what to say, you can take some of these papers with you. Whatever that can help you, check both websites out. We are compiling information at our office. We are open Tuesday to Saturday. Just leave early on Saturday by 4 o'clock. But thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it, and especially Mr. Pescadello. I really appreciate you coming.
Sorry, how do you actually say your name?
It's Pesky Solido.
Pesky Solido, okay.
You sound like a true Italian from the north. I like that. Pesky Solido.
Can't help it. I'll make another comment later. But thank you again, and please talk to your friends. And as I say, you don't have to be a scientist. You just have to have good common sense to make a good, sensible comment on there. And the more people that comment, the better. And keep in touch.
If anybody, I just want to pass on an idea that came up at the Site C Dam presentation. Somebody had an idea to do a paddle in the Fraser River at the same time as the paddle for the peace. So if anyone is sort of organizing, interested in helping organize, I can pass your contact info on to the person who had that idea.
When would that be?
I think it's in July. So I don't know how that's
too
factored
late.
in, but anyways, it would be a, you know, maybe it can be earlier. So if anyone's interested in doing some direct action organizing, I can pass your name on to this friend of ours. Yeah.